Do you know what the realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agree to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire video. In this video, I want to discuss Jaime Lannister and Ned Stark's fight scene. I'm sure all of you remember this incredible moment from the first season, but if you haven't read the books, then you might not know how different this scene is in the first book of Game of Thrones. Over the years, the Lannisters gave the Starks a lot of reasons not to like them, but I think Ned's hatred for the Lannisters mostly dates back to Robert's rebellion. One thing that really disgusted Ned, that he has never forgot, was how the Lannisters waited until after Rhaegar and his army fell before they joined their side to end the Mad King's reign. This was something that Ned would never forgive them for. In the Game of Thrones television show, one of my favorite additions made by Dan and Dave was the scene they added when we see Jaime and Ned standing together in the throne room of the Red Keep. The reason I love this scene is because it not only displayed Ned's feelings for Jaime, but it was also a history lesson that gave everyone a glimpse of one of the major events in Westeros that did help create this amazing story as we know it.
When I watched the Mad King die, I remembered him laughing as your father burned. It felt like justice.
Is that what you tell yourself at night? You're a servant of justice. That you were avenging my father when you shoved your sword in Aerys Targaryen's back.
I wish I could show you that whole scene without the video getting flagged, but I'm sure you remember it well. I thought the acting and the dialogue in that scene was incredible. It showed everyone how far back this hatred goes, as it also gave us a little more insight into who these characters are. Now, what's interesting about the scene I want to discuss today is it's not in the books either. Well, at least not in the way it was shown in the show. There is a confrontation between Ned and Jaime, but like I said, it happens very differently in the book. Jaime and Ned do not actually fight each other like they did in the show, but I kinda wish they had. I liked how Ned and Jaime ran into each other over and over again, exchanging these sort of verbal assaults that eventually led to bloodshed. The only issue I did have from that scene in the show was how they made Ned seem almost as good of a swordsman as Jaime. Based on what we know from the books, Ned Stark should not have stood a chance against the Kingslayer. I mean, after all, Jaime is said to be one of the greatest swordsmen in all of the Seven Kingdoms. I still thoroughly enjoyed the scene nonetheless. Now let me show you how the scene ended in the book. As you all know, shortly after Jaime thrown Bran out of the window, someone sent an assassin in his room to finish off the job, but he ended up losing his life instead. Well, this assassin had a Valyrian steel dagger. Not the sort of dagger your random assassin would have. Whoever wanted Bran dead obviously had some money.
I don't think Bran fell from that tower. I think he was thrown.
The boy was always sure-footed before.
Someone tried to kill him twice.
Did you notice the dagger the killer used? It's too fine a weapon for such a man. The blade is Valyrian steel, the handle dragon bone. Someone gave it to him.
They come into our home and try to murder my brother.
This led to Lady Catelyn leaving Winterfell for King's Landing so she could investigate. When Lady Catelyn arrives in King's Landing, she is escorted to Littlefinger's brothel, where she would find out who this dagger belonged to. According to Littlefinger, this was his dagger, only he had lost it over a gambling debt to Tyrion Lannister.
I bet on Sir Jaime in the jousting, as any sane man would, when the Knight of the Flowers unseated him. I lost this dagger.
To whom?
Tyrion Lannister, the imp.
This led them to believe Tyrion must have sent the assassin to Bran's room, but why would he do that? Shortly after this, Lady Catelyn just so happens to run into Tyrion Lannister at the inn at the crossroads, where she ultimately has him arrested, under the suspicion of attempting to kill her son.
This man came into my house as a guest, and there conspired to murder my son, a boy of 10. In the name of King Robert and the good lords you serve, I call upon you to seize him and help me return him to Winterfell to await the king's justice.
So then we fast forward a little bit, and we get to the moment where Jaime Lannister confronts Ned over the arrest of his brother. During this scene, Littlefinger takes Ned Stark to a brothel so he can speak to the mother of one of Robert Baratheon's bastards. You see, Ned Stark was in the middle of his own investigation. He was following all of the last movements Jon Arryn made right before his sudden death. Ned was hoping to soon figure out why Jon Arryn had an interest in all of Robert's bastard children. It would not be long before Ned would realize all of Robert's children had his black hair, yet somehow all the children him and Cersei had together were blonde of hair, just like Cersei and her brother, Jaime Lannister. When we see the whole scene in the show, it happens during the day, but in the book, it happens at night during a very heavy rainstorm. Littlefinger, Ned, and his men are soaked to the bone as they ride back to the Red Keep. There were rivers of black rainwater running down the hill when Jory called out, "My lord." His voice was hoarse with alarm. Within seconds, the street was now full of Lannister soldiers. Ned Stark immediately noticed all the men were wearing ringmail over leather, gauntlets, and steel helmets with golden lions on their crest. They were also soaked by the rainwater. Everything was happening so fast, Ned wasn't able to count how many men were there, but he knew there had to be almost a dozen of them. The soldiers were on foot and blocking their way, while holding long swords and iron spears in their hands. Things were about to get very interesting. "Behind you!" Ned heard Wyll shout, and when he turned his horse around, he saw there were more men behind him, blocking the road to stop them from any escape. I actually love what it says next. Jory's sword came singing from its scabbard. "Make way or die." "The wolves are howling," their leader said. Ned saw rain running down the man's face. Such a small pack, though. Littlefinger walked his horse forward, step by careful step. What is the meaning of this? This is the hand of the king. He was the hand of the king. The mud muffled the hooves of the blood-bay stallion. The soldiers in the street stepped aside and made way before him. On a golden breastplate, the Lion of Lannister roared its defiance. Now, if truth be told, I'm not sure what he is. "Lannister, this is madness," Littlefinger said. "Let us through. We are expected back at the castle. What do you think you're doing?" "Oh, he knows what he's doing," Ned said calmly. Jaime Lannister smiled. "Quite true. I'm looking for my brother. You remember my brother, don't you, Lord Stark? He was with us at Winterfell. Fair-haired, mismatched eyes, sharp of tongue, a short man." "I remember him well," Ned replied. "It would seem he has met some trouble on the road. My lord father is not very happy about this. Would you have any notion of who might want to wish my brother ill?" "Your brother has been taken at my command to answer for his crimes," Ned Stark said. Littlefinger groaned in dismay. "My lords." Sir Jaime then ripped his longsword from its sheath and urged his stallion forward. "Show me your steel, Lord Eddard. I'll butcher you like the Mad King if I must, but I'd sooner you die with a blade in your hand." Then he gave Littlefinger an arrogant glance and said, "I'd leave here fast if I did not care to get bloodstains on my expensive clothing." He did not need to urge Littlefinger, who said, "I will bring the city watch," he swore to Ned. The line of Lannister soldiers moved out of the way to let him through, but then they closed in behind him. Littlefinger vanished almost immediately. Ned's men had drawn their swords, but they were greatly outnumbered, almost 7-1. Eyes were watching them from nearby windows and doors, but no one was about to intervene. All of Ned's men were still on their horses, while Jaime's men were on foot, except for Jaime, who was still on the back of his stallion. Ned considered charging on their horses right through the men on foot, but he thought he had a better way to handle this without running. So, Ned warned the Kingslayer, "If you kill me, my wife will most certainly slay your brother Tyrion." Jaime Lannister shoved his gilded sword right into Ned's chest. The same sword that sipped on the blood of the last of the Dragon Kings, the Mad King Aerys Targaryen. Would she, the noble Catelyn Tully of Riverrun, murder a hostage? I think not. But I'm not willing to chance my brother's life on a woman's honor. Jaime slid the golden sword back into its sheath. Then he says, "I guess I will let you run back to Robert, so you can tell him about how I frightened you. I wonder if he'll care." Jaime threw back his wet hair with his fingers and wheeled his horse around. When he was beyond the line of swordsmen, he glanced back at his captain. He says, "Make sure no one hurts Lord Stark." "As you say, my lord." Even through the night and the rain, Ned could see the white of Jaime's smile, as he said, "Kill his men." "No!" Ned Stark screamed, reaching for his sword. Jaime was already out of sight by the time he heard Weil shout. Jaime's men closed in from all sides. Ned Stark rode one of them down, cutting at phantoms in red cloaks who gave way before him. Jory Castle began to charge on his horse. A steel-shod hoof caught a Lannister guardsman in the face with a sickening crunch. A second man reeled away, and for an instant Jory was free. Weil was cursing as they yanked him off his dying horse, sword slashing in the rain. Ned Stark galloped over to him, bringing his longsword down on the Lannister soldier's helmet. The jolt of the impact made him grit his teeth. The man stumbled to his knees, his lion crest sheared in half, blood running down his face. One of Ned's men was hacking at the hands that had seized his bridle, but then a spear caught him right in the belly. Suddenly Jory was back among them, a red rain flying from his sword. "No!" Ned shouted. "Jory, away!" Ned's horse slipped under him and came crashing down in the mud. There was a moment of blinding pain and the taste of blood in his mouth. He saw them cut the legs out from under Jory's horse and drag him to the earth, swords rising and falling as they closed in around him. When Ned's horse lurched back to its feet, he tried to rise, only to fall again, choking on his scream. He could see the splintered bone sticking out of his calf. It was the last thing he saw for a time. The rain came down and down and down. When he opened his eyes again, Lord Eddard Stark was alone with his dead. His horse moved closer, caught the rank scent of blood, and galloped away. Ned Stark began to drag himself through the mud, gritting his teeth at the agony in his leg. It seemed to take years. Faces were watching from candlelit windows, and people began to emerge from the alleys and doors, but none of them came to help. Littlefinger and the City Watch found him there in the street, cradling Jory Castle's body in his arms. Somewhere the Goldcloaks found a litter, but the ride back to the castle was a blur of agony, and Ned lost consciousness more than once. He remembered seeing the Red Keep looming ahead of him in the first gray light of dawn. The rain had darkened the stone of the massive walls to the color of blood. This chapter ends right as it says, "Then Grand Maester Pycelle was looming over him, holding a cup, whispering, 'Drink, my lord. Here, the milk of the poppy, for your pain.'" He remembered swallowing, and Pycelle was telling someone to heat the wine to a boil and fetch him some clean silk, and that was the last that Ned knew. Now you can see how different this scene was in the book. Although Jaime did give the order, he did not shed any blood himself. He did not jam a dagger into Jory's eye, nor did he fight Ned Stark at all. Ned wasn't even injured by one of the Lannister guards like he was in the show, when they stuck the spear through the back of his leg. In the book version, Ned breaks his leg when him and his horse go crashing into the ground. Now, like I was saying before, I think I like the way the show did this better. I like that we were able to see Ned and Jaime get their hands dirty. I know I was anxious to see Jaime fight, considering how everyone said he was this amazing swordsman. The only issue I had with it is they went a little overboard by having Ned hold his own against Jaime. If we're to believe he is as good as they say he is, then he should have won that easily. I'm fine with it overall though. This is one of those instances where I like the book version and I like the show version. Let me know if there are any other scenes you would like to see done in a video format next. I already have several in mind, but if there is a scene you always wanted to know how it was done in the books versus the show, then let me know down below. I can add that to my list. As always, I want to thank everyone for watching. Also, if you want to get early access to these videos, consider joining my Patreon account. That link is in the description. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you again very soon. Bye.